Hello everybody, it's Peter, Peter with an I, S-T-A-W-A-R-T, and this is my YouTube audiobook entitled, I Don't Know, The Dark Tower, I Guess. As long as your screen is red, you're listening to the introduction. Audiobooks as a form of entertainment are unique in the respect that they're hands-free, eyes-free. With the current state of technology, you can play video games and watch movies anywhere. However, you need your eyes. If you get motion sickness on the bus like I do, it's important to keep your eyes up and look out the window. That's how you beat motion sickness. It's hard to look out the window if you're looking at an electronic device. If you're driving, it's important to keep your hands free, eyes free, which is part of the reason car stereos have always been very popular. Music is great. Another thing people really enjoy is dialogue. An example of this is morning radio. Commute time is a reality of the world, and most would agree that commute time is wasted time. But a great many people look forward to their morning radio shows and audiobooks. If you've never been into radio shows or audiobooks, it's tempting to believe that they are less than. After all, they are lacking the visual experience. In computer talk, you get an audio file without a video file. I would argue it's potentially a greater experience. It gets into your head in a different way than audio plus video. If you've ever really enjoyed an audio work, you may feel like adding video would lessen the experience, like adding video would be a distraction and dampen the work in some way. A similar phenomenon plays out when your favorite book is made into a movie and you hate it. When you read the book, not only did your own imagination do a lot of the heavy lifting. For example, you imagine the main character to look a certain way and the landscapes to look and feel a certain way. You also kind of know that there's no way a visual representation of the tale can fully deliver the artistic complexities provided by the spoken word. You can show the main character running their hand over some tree bark, but you can't tell them how it feels or what it reminds them of. In short, I like to listen to stuff, and I hope you like to listen to my stuff. I have a bunch of stuff on YouTube. At the beginning of every segment, I'll say a quick word about one of my other YouTube projects. I promise to make it quick. I'll try to make it under a minute. If you really get into my story, which I hope you do, you may see these little plugs as distractions and you prefer to skip over them. That's fine. The video during these opening parts is red. Fast forward through the red. If it so happens that you're working with only an audio file, I added a beep when the little talk at the beginning is done and the story continues. If you're viewing this in a trough and peak representation of the audio file, the beep looks like a rectangle, and you can fast forward to the rectangle. Without further ado, allow me to present I Don't Know, The Dark Tower, I Guess.
Chapter 1. From above, the dense cumulus that choked the stratosphere looked like the wall of a stony fortress, whose halls seemed to pulse with a kind of presence. The quality of darkness cast upon the mosaic of black and olive mold lining the windowsill made for a type of greenhouse condition within the condemned house, whose broken roof had been braced up with wooden beams to keep it from sagging to the point of collapse. This greenhouse condition had nothing to do with the ideal environment for which plants grow best, but rather it had everything to do with the blossoming of ideas. Ideas that would someday be manifested in some very significant ways. The tapping of the keyboard was intermittently interrupted with the whizzing sound of the disk drive, a beep and a period of silence, while Nancy took a long moment to look deeply at nothing and think. She continued tapping away on the keys in front of the monitor mounted in front of the monster computer she had been sent to dismantle and dispose of 6 months earlier. Its owner, an awful villainous creature,
had abandoned it.
After he won a sum of money from a series of court cases he was involved in. The winnings in the court case were astronomical, so the fraction of money the plaintiff actually walked away with, after the lawyer fees, was actually very decent. The computer beeped and whizzed for a few seconds. What Nancy was typing in were long number sequences. Each of the hundreds and hundreds of numbers stood for something significant within the complex program she was working on. Her project could be compared to a room full of tangled cobwebs, all of which were arranged in some sort of meaningful order. The reason Nancy was so closely tied to the monster computer, day in and day out, and why she didn't get out more to socialize and exercise, was because she knew that if she forgot which strands went where, it would be like a spider falling into its own web, and she would become tangled, and the whole project would be worthless. Nancy rubbed her brow. When the numbers started to dance around and turn into just a bunch of meaningless lines, she took a moment to convert them back into a word problem to help objectify things, like a painter standing back and looking at the mural as a whole. Okay, if the energy level is 90, which is high, the happiness is at 10, which is low. Then frustration level would balance out to be high. She took a moment to think of the equations she had devised. If E 90 and H 10, then F. What? She mumbled. She made some guesses and sketched them out on a piece of scratch paper. What Nancy was devising was a personality, a computer brain. But she was still far from finished. What Nancy was also developing was the size of her figure. Every 10 or 15 minutes, a little indicator would go off in her brain that read, "Please insert food and coffee into big fat belly for optimal cognitive performance." In truth, Nancy's belly wasn't fat at all. It was her rump that was gaining inertia. Nancy, like other girls, had always been very sensitive about her waistline, but for the past few months she had been under a self-imposed exile from society. Her only connection was with Sally, the rotund mini-mart clerk who rang up Nancy's supply of junk food on a daily basis, always giving her nutritional tips about which junk food contained less fat. Barbecue-flavored curly crunches, original-style grunions, or the jelly-stuffed Caicos.
Ooh, yummy!
Nancy stayed away from the brand new line of 100% fat-free potato chips because their chemical properties made them greasy, both going in and coming out. Compared to Sally, Nancy was quite slim, and she justified her snacking by walking up the road to the mini-mart instead of taking the car. But in truth, it was a losing battle. The cellulite crept up on Nancy, much the same way that hands on a clock, which appear to be still and unmoving, creep up on the hour. If Nancy were to watch a super-speed, stock-frame image of her buns, she would be horrified as the blubber came out and crushed the camera. While she pondered her next sequence, she munched on a chip, but made sure to keep it on the right side of her mouth. As she brushed the crumbs off her fingers to type, she accidentally bit down on her left side and winced. She had been ignoring the growing ache in a particular tooth for a few days, hoping it would go away on its own. Waiting for the pain to subside after biting on it, she decided that maybe she needed to schedule a visit to the dentist. An action that would be the first link in a hellfire chain of events that would quake the foundation of the stony gray fortress resting overhead.
To continue the story, go to PIRSViola-1-2.